This video tells the story of the deadliest traffic accident in French history, which took place in the early hours of July 31, 1982. Two buses carrying children and their teachers were involved in a tragic crash on the A6 motorway, just south of Beaune. The trip was a subsidized holiday organized by the prefecture of Crépy-en-Valois for low-income families who usually couldn't afford a summer break. The children were on their way to a summer camp in the small village of Ossois, near the Vannes National Park in the French Alps. A total of 107 children and 6 guardians boarded the two buses, departing just after 8 p.m. on July 30th. The journey to Ossois was expected to take about 15 hours, with the buses driving through the night to arrive by 9 a.m. The first weekend of August was known as Black Saturday because of the heavy traffic, as millions of French citizens hit the roads for their vacations. Many were trying to beat the rush, so traffic was unusually heavy even on the night of July 30th. The accident occurred at around 1:45 a.m., after the buses had been on the road for nearly 6 hours. They were on the A6 motorway, approaching a section where the southbound lanes narrowed from 3 to 2. It was raining heavily, and conditions were bad. The traffic was much heavier than usual, and the narrow road created a bottleneck. At that time of night, many drivers were likely tired, adding to the dangerous situation. Eyewitnesses reported that 2 cars were overtaking in the third lane, which was about to merge. They were forced to cut sharply between the 2 buses. Just then, the front bus braked as it hit slow-moving traffic. The 2 cars that had squeezed in also braked hard, but the driver of the second bus didn't have enough time to react. He crashed into the back of the second car, pushing the cars into each other and into the rear of the front bus. As cars on the motorway swerved to avoid the pileup, 2 more vehicles slammed into the side of the rear bus, and another 3 crashed into them. The impact caused the petrol tank of the rear car to burst open, spilling fuel across the road. Inside the buses, chaos broke out. The sleeping children and adults were jolted awake by the crash, startled by the sound of screeching horns and panicked screams. The kids must have been terrified. The children in the front bus were quickly ushered out and brought to the side of the motorway, where they huddled together in the dark and rain. But in the rear bus, the side door was too damaged from the crash and couldn't be opened. By this time, a fire had started in one of the wrecked cars, quickly spreading to the other vehicles. One of the guardians still trapped on the rear bus broke the back window, trying to create an escape route. The flames were leaping from vehicle to vehicle, and the bus was filling with children. 6 vehicles were now on fire, with the flames growing more intense every second. Through the smashed rear window, 15 children managed to escape to safety, but the fire spread too fast. As the rear bus was engulfed in flames, no one else made it out. Other drivers watched in horror as the bus turned into a blazing inferno. One witness later said, "There was just nothing anyone could do." In total, the accident claimed 53 lives, 7 adults and 46 children. Of those, 44 children tragically died on the burning bus, having survived the initial crash. The nation of France was deeply shaken, but nowhere felt the impact more than the small town of Crépy-en-Valois. As word of the disaster spread, heartbroken and anxious families gathered, desperate to know if their children had survived or if they were about to receive the worst news imaginable. The mayor read out the names of the victims in alphabetical order, and the scenes that followed were heartbreaking. Footage of mothers screaming and fainting as they heard their children's names being called is gut-wrenching. No parent should ever have to experience that. The grief was so overwhelming that even French President François Mitterrand attended the funeral. Inside the town hall, the 44 small coffins of the children from Crépy-en-Valois were laid out in orderly rows. Only 6 bore the names of the children. The remaining 38 coffins were simply numbered, as the children's bodies had been too badly burned to be identified. One grieving mother cried out, "I don't even know which coffin to hug. I don't know where my son is." Those who couldn't be identified were buried together in the town cemetery, and a plaque was placed in the church to ensure the tragedy would always be remembered. The investigation into the accident concluded that poor driving and bad weather were the main causes. One witness claimed that the buses had been racing, flashing their lights, and weaving through traffic, but no other witnesses could confirm this, and the claim was dropped. However, investigators found that the rear bus had defective brakes. It had traveled over 200,000 kilometers without a brake check, and the pads were nearly worn out, which likely contributed to the crash. The bus company was fined 25,000 francs, and the surviving driver had his license revoked. Following the tragedy, Transport Minister Charles Fitteman introduced strict new regulations to prevent a similar disaster from happening again. These included lower speed limits during rainy weather, speed restrictions for buses and heavy goods vehicles, HGVs, and a ban on driving school groups in buses and coaches during peak holiday times. These laws are still in effect today. While France has experienced other tragic road accidents since then, the Beaune disaster remains the deadliest traffic accident in the country's history. A memorial garden was established at the Beaune rest stop on the A6, near the site of the accident, as a tribute to the victims. Every year, the residents of Crépy-en-Valois hold a memorial service to honor and remember the lives lost in the A6 disaster, ensuring their memory lives on.